Okay, let's make a start, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام وعلى سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us this afternoon or evening, depending upon where you are in the world. Apologies, we didn't have a webinar last week, but we're back this week, inshallah, and alhamdulillah. What a series it has been. You know, we've had 11 or 12 weekly teacher webinars during this COVID-19 lockdown. And alhamdulillah, it's been a real pleasure. But unfortunately, today is the final webinar of the series. That doesn't mean we're not going to have any more webinars. We will have lots in the future, inshallah, but they're likely to be monthly. So this is going to be the final webinar. And I really have left the best till last, okay? No disrespect to any of our speakers. And I know many of them are tuning in today. Why? Because our guest, mashallah, really, and if the guest can just maybe put his fingers in his ears, okay? Because I know he's not gonna like what I'm about to say. He really is a giant, mashallah. And we really are standing on his shoulders. There's lots of people standing on his shoulders. We are very fortunate to have Ustadh Muhammad Akram-Khan Cheema with us, Chairman of the International Board of Educational Research and Resources, IBERR, and he's going to be talking about education in the heart of the Qur'an. Now, our guest, mashallah, is more than an Ustadh, more than a sheikh, more than an academic, etc. I'm pretty sure all of our former guests on here will also agree with me as well, that Haji, and we lovingly call him Haji here at Nida Trust, Haji Akram-Khan Cheema is the backbone of Muslim schools in this country, having been instrumental in setting up and supporting the very first Muslim schools in this country over the past 30 years. And many of you know I'm currently the head teacher of Islamia Primary School. And I know from the mission statement to all sorts of different things, this was the doing of Haji Akram, along with Brother Yusuf Islam, you know, spending 3 decades helping Muslim schools across the country to grow, mashallah. And, you know, when I learned about Haji's background in terms of when he qualified, you know, the fact he's from Kenya, mashallah, and he qualified as a teacher in 1968. And really, there is not much else that one could possibly do. There isn't much else that Haji Akram hasn't done in the entire time, the 40 or 50 years, his dedication to education and schooling, not just in this country, but also in many other countries abroad. And in fact, really, if I were to sit here and list to you the number of organizations that he's worked for, the number of roles that he's had, the people who he's supported, I think we'll be here all day. And that's why when we were advertising this event, or this webinar, we sent out a link for you to read and to have a bit of more of an understanding about our guest. You know, inspector of schools, advisor of numerous organizations. And the crucial thing is, we're not just talking about Muslim schools here. You know, Haji Akram has been supporting mainstream schools. He was an inspector of mainstream schools in Birmingham for a very, very long time. So somebody who really has an amazing understanding of mainstream and an amazing understanding of Muslim schools. And that's why we have been so dependent upon Haji Akram for so many years. And so I'm not going to do justice if I read a list, and that's why I'm not. And so if you have not read that link and the background of Haji Akram, I will post the link in the box a little bit later on, inshallah. And I don't want to read out a list that I know is not going to do justice, inshallah. But suffice to say that Haji Akram is like a father figure to us in the Trust, and I'm sure many others as well. Please listen carefully. Really, please listen carefully to really every word of Haji Akram. Gems like Haji Akram are very rare. and we must make the most of his company whilst we can, inshallah. And so this is a webinar, of course, for those of you who join us regularly, you'll know what the structure is, but just in case there are a few others who haven't joined us before, I ask, where have you been? Not to worry, inshallah, we do have recordings of every single one of our previous webinars, and perhaps I can send a link out a little bit later in the webinar. So this is a webinar. It will include a presentation by Haji Akram-Khan Cheema, followed by questions from the virtual floor, which is you. And so I normally give preference to verbal questions, okay? So if you want to ask a question, please just raise your hand. There's a reaction button on the bottom, or you can just write the word speak, S-P-E-A-K, in the chat box, and then I will sort out the order, inshallah, okay? I do apologize in advance if we go slightly over, okay? Normally I say we'll finish by 5 o'clock, but because it's the final webinar, and because we've got Haji Akram-Khan Cheema with us, forgive me if we do go over by 5 or 10 minutes, inshallah. But we won't go past 15:15, inshallah. Okay, so let us go straight over to our Haji Akram Cheema. Let me spotlight you first of all before I bring up your presentation, Haji, and let's see if I can unmute you. Yes, I can. Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
So, mashallah.
And everybody else hear me.
So I know that you've taken part in some previous webinars in terms of, but you were in Pakistan at that point. So I know others are probably thinking, is he still in Pakistan? No, you're not, are you?
No, came back on the 4th of June.
Mashallah. Okay, so you're down in London, so you're quite close to where we are. Okay, all right, inshallah. First of all, thank you so much, Haji Akram, for joining us. I know it's going to be a real treat for all of us, and apologies if you didn't like my introduction, but hey, I did mute it a little bit. But hey, let's get on with the webinar, inshallah. I'm going to share your presentation, and there you go. And if you just let me know, of course, when you want to move on to the next slide, inshallah. So just to say to everybody else that we are going to take questions at the end, and just let me know by putting your hand up later on or writing the word speak, inshallah, and I will order the questions then. Okay, over to you, Haji Akram-Khan Cheema. Bismillah.
Thank you very much. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I begin in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, whom none of us can thank enough or show the depth of gratitude due to him for his bounteous gifts. And I send my salutations and praises to his blessed and beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best of creation, the divinely guided, the most perfect personality, the most perfect teacher, and an extraordinarily exemplary role model for the whole of humanity, sent to us as a gift, a mercy to all mankind. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. It is you alone we worship, and you alone we seek help. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my brothers and sisters in Islam. The first slide is really there to show my appreciation. I was delighted when Nidha Trust decided to establish the Muslim Teachers Network just before Ramadan. My generation established IBERR, or IBERR, as a think tank. Networking without digital technology was very, very different. Nowadays, MTN has allowed us to share ideas and learn from Dr. Abdullah Sahin about the transformative educational practice and education as a relational process, from Dr. Farah Ahmed about her 18 years of excellent work with the Shakhsiya schools and her research findings on pedagogy, the diagnostic halaqa, and a thought-provoking look at the Hadith Jibreel, from Dr. Nadeem Maiman about managerialism, conceptual idolatry and the need to reinforce humility. From Dr. Asma Klassen about pathways towards positive identity. From Professor Rajab about the 9 critical questions to ask regarding what makes education Islamic. From Dr. Ruby about maintaining relationships and mental health. And from my beloved ever friend and partner in crime, Idris Khamisa, about rethinking schooling in the wake of COVID-19. And from Dr. Musharraf Hussain, very, very close friend and dear, dear colleague, about the life-changing message of the Qur'an. All this is the touch of a button while sitting at home. Zoom, and there it is. What a blessing, alhamdulillah. We're all inspired by the tremendous efforts of our previous generations. The title of my presentation is the title of the latest version of a book I've been trying to write and rewrite and ever since we ran the Maths and Science Postgraduate Certificate Education Initial Teacher Training course, when IBERR joined hands with AMS to work with the University of Gloucestershire. We used Dr. Meher Abdul Haq's book, and I don't know whether you'll be able to show this on screen, but this is the original book that we used for the PGCE by Dr. Abdul Haq. That was the last print. There was no more in print after we used it for our course. We used his book, which was published in 1990, and it was entitled Educational Philosophy of the Holy Qur'an. As one of the textbooks of the PGCE course, I went to Lahore, especially to meet him and to thank him personally and to tell him how valuable his book had proved to be for our trainees and for ourselves. It's inspired us in a whole variety of ways. I suggested some updates in the light of latest research findings for his next sprint. However, his health did not allow him to do that, and he persuaded me to take on that responsibility. I eventually, but reluctantly, agreed when he implored me at his dying wish at his deathbed. The book is yet to be published, and if this revised book, if you know anyone who may be able to help with the publication of this, please get in touch. The 1977 International Islamic Education Conference in Makkah Mukarramah, followed by 6 other international conferences, were hugely significant in promoting what I call the global Islamic education movement. They helped to continue the evolutionary process to keep pace with change. In 1996, at the 7th International Education Conference, organized by Dr. Maulana Ali Adam in Cape Town in South Africa, there was an interesting departure initiated by the Muslim teachers and educators of South Africa. They did not want another set of intellectual papers from the scholars, but they demanded a practical workshop with the needs of the teachers and their children, their students in mind. This successfully redirected the global Islamic education movement and its priorities from the universities to the schools. That was very fortunate for me and for many others. Slide 2 and slide 3 are about learning is change that strives to keep abreast of change in a constantly changing world. Chapter 13 in the book gives more details about this phenomena of change. Human beings are continuously evolving. If the universal, permanent values of an all-inclusive, open human civilization in the Qur'an are sidelined along this evolutionary path, there is the risk of stagnation and the danger of the uglification, I call it, of human beings. Human evolution directly linked to the revealed truth by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is purposeful and beneficial. Allah revealed the truth in various forms to Adam alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, and all his chosen prophets, including the last and final testament to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Allah's work of creation continues as He adds to the expanding universe. The universe or the multiverse, as scientists now describe, not only in quantity, but in qualities, functions, relations, and variations in the innumerable ways. Allah has created things that we have no knowledge of as yet. That is in the Qur'an, and we don't know. Really, we don't know. I asked Sheikh Ahmed Babikar once, how much of the Qur'an do we really know at the moment? And he said, you know what, not, and the whole page was full of knots to say there is a huge amount of more that is hidden in this, the miracle of the Qur'an. So there is a lot more to learn for all of us. Learning is itself a change that tries to keep abreast of change. Let me just repeat that. Learning is itself a change that tries to keep abreast of change. With climate change and environmental change and novelties and uniquely inexplicable changes like COVID-19 that appear suddenly out of nowhere as a further aspect of reality. Indeed, there would be no cause for learning at all if there were no novelties like that. Slide 3 is about Global Islamic Education Movement. It's not an organization. It's an exciting and dynamic movement that we are all part of. All of you, myself, that is most of us who are actively keeping pace with change. Each and every day as change occurs, we look at what's happening around us, and happily, there are hundreds and thousands of thinking people like you and others who are making a difference, looking at that change and continue to ponder, reflect, and ask questions about the cosmos, about the purpose of life, about the heavens and earth, and about the universe or the multiverse. Lifelong learning and continuous acquisition of ilm, knowledge and wisdom is embedded in the philosophy of life of believers and is therefore the cornerstone of philosophy of education in the heart of the Qur'an. The mission of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was to deliver the message revealed to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our mission is to acquire that knowledge, understand its true meanings within the context of our changing circumstances, and pass it on generation to generation. As inheritors of a glorious legacy, we should be inspired to strive hard to make a significant contribution towards human evolution by raising standards and improving the quality of life for all, not just those who are born Muslims, for all through education. We must identify all aspects of human personal development and undertake the Quranic character building task very seriously. Some of our the 28 chapters in the book are meant mainly for non-Muslims, just to heighten awareness for teachers and awareness and educators who don't know about the Quran, who don't know about the Prophet and the Quranic and prophetic guidance. For example, chapter 6 is all about the greatest gift of Allah in humanity, the majestic Quran. It explains that the Quran contains numerous aids and resources for the acquisition of knowledge that is there and is increasing. This chapter lists 11 examples from the Quran as well as 12 precautions against deceptive and false knowledge. Chapter 7 in the book explains the Quran as the final revelation, the final testament of truth, and a code of perfect laws for humanity. Slide 4, 5, and 6 are about our glorious legacy. Thanks to my friend Professor Salim Al-Hassani, 1001 Inventions Initiative promotes awareness of Muslim contributions to science and technology in modern society from the 7th century onwards. An impressive exhibition was held at the Science Museum in London between January and April of 2010, driven by the Foundation of Science and Technology. Professor Hassani has taken this interactive exhibition all over the world, and most of you and millions of others have proudly visited this exhibition. The books, like the 1001 Inventions, and I have a copy of it here, which most of you have probably seen. This and others which have been printed and published by others in association with Professor Hassani. Muslim Heritage in Our World, 1001 Inventions and Awesome Facts from Muslim Civilizations, and others like this, introduce and expand on many of these amazing and inspirational inventions and discoveries, and relates them to developments today. Shakhsiya schools, for example, very early on made use of these and to invite the children into the world of creativity and imagination. They held an exhibition of the work that the children had done. Very, very, very impressive exhibition it was. And since then, of course, Shakhsiya schools have moved on. The questions I always like to ask children are things like, what are you going to invent? What are you going to discover? What are you going to do with the gift of life that Allah has given you to make a difference for yourself and to advance humanity? What are you going to do? How do you see yourself in 30 years' time? What are you doing? Where are you? What are you doing? What have you achieved? These are the questions that I wish every teacher, every educator, every parent must ask daily, every day, so that our children are conscious of our heritage and our legacy that led the world. Now, why are we not leading the world today? Because we're not asking those questions from our children. Our children will, inshallah, lead the world again. While the West was struggling with the dark ages, a golden age of Islamic civilization was actively promoting science, technology, and innovation into this world. Why are we not leading that world today? We must ask those questions from our children and support them and create opportunities for them to develop their thinking in that direction. Slide 7 shows the most commonly used English words of Arabic origin. You can read them at your leisure. Slide 8, my years with IBERR, with International Board for Education, Research and Resources, since 1994, in an effort to promote the global Islamic education movement by visiting schools, colleges, universities around the world, and I've been privileged with doing that. That has convinced me that it's all about keeping abreast of change, because change is here to stay. The best of them, these people that I met, the universities and institutions that I visited, take their responsibilities very seriously and continue to invest time, effort, and resources into looking forward to a better future. No progress or development is worth achieving unless tomorrow is an improvement over today. The book describes how Muslim scholars initially studied Greek thought with great enthusiasm. They put so much confidence in Greek philosophy that their first impulse was to seek to understand some of the Quranic revelations in the light of Greek thought. It took them over 200 years to perceptibly recognize that the spirit of the Quran was not essentially pro-classical, and that the result of this perception was a kind of intellectual inferiority complex. Some Muslims fall into this mindset even today. In the book, I mention the scientific discovery of Higgs boson and the extraordinary and innovative production of Nobel Prize winners Andre and Coetzee at the University of Manchester in 2003 of super thin graphite, the thinnest and the strongest material known. When Professor Andre was asked what drives him to carry on with his constant dedication to continuing with further research, his simple answer was, he simply said, human instinct drives me. This you and I know as fitra. Chapter 2 of the book offers historical perspectives on education, how changes have taken place over time, and how different generations have met these changes, dealt with them, and improved things as they went on. A reasoned argument is presented about striving for the finest of Islamic and the best of secular education for all children in the book. That is child-centric, teacher-friendly, and involves active, participative, and joyful learning. Slide 9 is, I asked my friend Rizwanul Haq for an image that for him captures the essence after reading the book, of the book that I'm rewriting. And he gave me this wonderful calligraphic image in black and white with ilm in the heart. I thought it was wonderful. I changed it slightly to color coordinate it into the cover design. He politely and respectfully agreed with my change, but I'm not sure if he was pleased with it. Bless him. The role of the heart in the learning and in emotional development is of great interest to me. The more I read and try to rediscover the depth of meanings in the heart of the Quran, the more I am convinced that we are missing something vitally important by not concentrating enough and more on the heart, the qalb, fu'ad, sadr. The core of education in the heart of Quran for me is based on its permanent universal values. Permanent universal values in the Quran. Remember that this is something which is vitally important for us. Education concerns the whole person, and the whole person becomes whole only, we feel in IBERR, when all 7 aspects of the human being develop equally well at the same time. They're all interlinked. The moral, spiritual, physical, intellectual, cultural, emotional, and social. We elaborate on that in the book. Idris Khamisa, this wonderful friend of mine, during one of our many IBERR think tank networking creative sessions, offered an easier to remember formula as an acronym, moral spices. And I use that with my non-Muslim colleagues and in discussions and in workshops quite a lot. Moral spices. Come on, let's spice it all up. And moral spices is the way forward is illustrated in the next slide. Any shift in the interlinked balance between, and this interlinked balance is in the Quran, in the heart of the Quran. Any shift in the interlinked balance between these 7 character building aspects of personal development can bring about a change, not only in the aims and objectives of education, but also in the quality of learning, in the methods and approaches to teaching, and also to the educational values being conveyed by the teacher and being absorbed by the learner. No education, we all know this, no education is value-free. In fact, no discussion, no discourse is value-free. Anybody who speaks, anybody who talks, anybody who shares, and in the society in which we live, knows that there are biases and the ways they think are dependent on where they come from, who they are, and what they're thinking at that moment. outstanding teachers and educators remain constantly in search of universal, permanent values of life. In Britain, we got bogged down with a debate on British value. We dealt with them, I think, very effectively. The MS and all these wonderful people who are working in the Muslim schools actually dealt with them very positively, alhamdulillah. Teachers and educators who strive to follow in the footsteps of the prophets are at the forefront of that quest for the permanent values of life. Slide 10. An important aspect of promoting global Islamic education movement has been the establishment of Muslim Islamic schools, Darul Ulooms, Madaris, and similar institutions by Muslims, mostly for Muslims. I believe all of you who have logged into the Muslim Teachers Network today and have in the past are actively engaged in promoting the global Islamic education movement. Just by logging in, may Allah bless you all. I feel sure that most of you have considered some similarly idealistic or Islamic wording to the ones on this slide regarding your vision, your mission, or your dream for the future. Slide 11, submission of the self to the will of Allah. Submission of the self to the will of Allah is what will ultimately enable human beings to define and refine the purpose of life in the heart of the Qur'an. Because submission to the will of Allah is the definition of a Muslim. It is how we must remain in touch with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His creation for us. Those of us who accept that the creation of the universe, heavens and the earth, and of the human race is not without a purpose, and that our duty is to accept personalized ownership of promoting this purpose defined by Allah, and thereby achieve our highest destiny progressively, will inevitably consider education of ourselves, education by ourselves, and education for ourselves as that purpose. Education of the self, by the self, for the self. When you think of for akhirah, you'll know what I mean. The Quranic guidance on education of oneself, by oneself, and for oneself is presented throughout the book and is presented under the following headings in chapter 2. Zikr and fikr, remembrance and contemplation as instruction. And salah, fasting and prescribed daily prayers as disciplining and training. Amar bil maruf and nahy anil munkar, mutuality of admonition and counseling for recognized behavior and prohibition for disapproved conduct. Such of Allah's commandments are often misinterpreted negatively as indoctrination. These are by people who have not submitted to the will of Allah, and therefore frowned upon as indoctrination because they haven't submitted to the will of Allah. May Allah give them the tawfiq. Slides 12, 13, and 14. History of the Deen of Islam has not been full plain sailing. I won't read what is there, you can read it for yourself. Far from this plain sailing, anti-Muslim sentiments by the mass media has had a field day at our expense, although this has not deterred Muslims from carrying on with the mission of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Of course we were affected. Of course we were angry. Of course we were frustrated. Of course we made mistakes in our responses to the unreasonable, nonsensical attacks on Islam and on Muslims. But that happens mostly when we let shaitan lead us away from the ways of Allah in the heart of the Quran. We must learn from our mistakes, from carrying the victim mentality in our hearts and minds and adopting the blame culture onto the truth and the enlightened ways of Allah and His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Slide 13. We all know about the Trojan Horse. That debacle in Birmingham that tried to destroy the efforts of dedicated educators to raise standards and improve the educational aspirations of Muslim children in our schools. Lies, deceptions, assumptions, misuse of political and institutional power still resonates around the educational establishment. When Michael Gove was Secretary of State for Education in 2014, the government created and actively promoted the mass hysteria around the Trojan Horse hoax letter. Slide 14 is about parents and communities. We all have 6 options, all of us, listed in the book. Chapter 3 gives case studies of these options in action, where IBERR was involved in advising, offering consultancy services. These case studies look at the methodologies and processes adopted by various organizations around the world to achieve Islamization of knowledge, Islamification of education, and or giving education an Islamic perspective, as in Nigeria with Sheikha Aisha Dimo, may Allah bless her soul. Chapter 4 informs the reader about what is essential or valid knowledge. And chapter 5 looks at Wahi as divine revelation. It describes the highest and purest form of knowledge as essential guidance for human reasoning. Slide 15. I must admit, there were times in my professional career when I wondered whose side I was on. My professional position came under scrutiny. At the time when Salman Rushdie published his book, and when parents demanded halal school meals for their children in Bradford. And that's when I asked myself, am I part of the Ummah, or am I really a professional inspector working for the local authority? And the answer came loudly and clearly, that I have to be part of the Ummah. And if I'm not part of the Ummah, then I am not worth of being called a Muslim. Slide 16. Whatever the challenge and whatever the hurdles or mountains for us to climb, as long as we remind ourselves the ultimate power and authority lies with Allah, there is nothing to fear. The trials and tribulations of life will carry on. That is life. We don't have a long way to go, as sometimes I have said, and some other people say, a long way to go before we achieve our objectives. But we have until the day of judgment to patiently persevere, because change is here to stay. Allah is expanding the universe, and information is exploding. So we need to keep pace with that change. The Deen of Islam is the best way. It is Allah's way. The Qur'an is the ultimate truth. The Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is the perfect role model. We all know that. We share that. This is part of our belief. This is our faith. This is our deeply held iman. The Deen of Islam is for the whole of humanity. We sometimes forget that. Not just for those of us who are born Muslims, for the whole of humanity. Until we enable all children, teachers, and all educators to continue evolving, to take full advantage of the ultimate truth in the heart of the Quran, and willingly and openly seek the depth of wisdom in adopting the prophetic methods, we cannot rest. We can never sit back and relax, because our mission continues to the end of the world and to the day of judgment. The whole purpose of life is to carry on the prophetic mission, to help ourselves and to help humanity, to establish an all-inclusive, diverse, open civilization, words that I learned from Professor Rajab. Slide 17, 3 main factors that influence everyone's lives: structural institutions, administrative and governance processes and procedures, the mainstream culture. These 3 are things that we were conscious of, and they establish one's norms and define what is acceptable, what is unacceptable based on the prevailing values. I learned that early on in my career, and I used it regularly in my workshops and raising awareness with my colleagues who were mostly non-Muslims. The concepts of integration and assimilation were discussed ad infinitum, and they were dependent on the perspective one has on the prevailing values and norms at the time. And I was fed up of sharing this with my colleagues, but nevertheless, we use these 3 structures, procedures, and cultures. The Ummah has been through stages of victim mindset to the blaming others and blaming mentality and culture. And I have tried to share in this book how I have learned through my personal experience and how I'm still learning from my mistakes. I'm not an angel, none of us are. We all make mistakes and we learn from them. Hope all of us are learning and continue to learn from our mistakes and from our experiences. The aims and objectives of IBERR, the think tank, like everyone else involved in promoting global Islamic education movement, must remain focused on advancing education for the benefit of the whole of humanity, not just Muslims, from within the heart of the Qur'an. Finding faults in the secular or so-called Western educational systems and blaming others for providing deficient education and hiding in an inferiority complex within our psyche is counterproductive. We all know that. I hope we do, and certainly not the way forward. Chapter 1, we detailed how and why mainstream mass education was established to begin with, particularly in Europe and in Britain. It was funded and backed by wealthy and powerful who saw something in it for them. And that's why they established it. Before that, the church had a hand in establishing schools and education. But the powerful and the wealthy, firstly, had economics in their mind. And secondly, the cultural perpetuation, their own culture, elitist culture. And thirdly, the social benefits. And we talk about all these 3 at length in the book. Slide 18. It is my contention that one day, inshallah, all teachers and educators who approach this quest for excellence with an open mind, a pure heart, sincere heart, and a clear, thoughtful mind will be compelled to accept that there is a great deal yet to be learned from the revealed wisdom and embedded within the eternal truth of the Qur'an and the prophetic guidance. Inshallah, the Qur'an repeatedly appeals to those who know and understand, to think and to reason, to ponder, to reflect, and invites human beings to give serious thought to universal truths, to ponder, to reflect, and to think of the consequences before making informed choices. For believers, the Qur'an gives the purest guidance to those who strive to continue seeking the ultimate truth in search of reality. Slide 19. The aims and objectives of education cannot be separated from the aims and objectives of life, because life is education. We are in the university of life, and we educating. Whether we attend any institution or not, we are learning all the time. There are millions of children around the world never go to school, but they're learning. There are people that I have met as I travel the world who have never been to schools, but they are learned. They are learned. They are wise. Never went to university, but they are pondering, reflecting, and mashallah, the noor in their faces and what Allah has gifted them with gives me hope for the future. The first aim of education in the heart of the Quran is strengthening the Iman, faith and belief in Almighty Allah as Rahim and Rahman, the loving, not one just to be feared, the loving, Rahim, Rahman. The second aim of education is to earnestly seek the goodness in this world and the goodness of the hereafter, the Akhirah. That's why education for the Akhirah. The third aim of education is empowerment of self. The greatest jihad is the struggle against one's nafs, to overcome the destructive forces of falsehood, the shaitan, and bring forth all the goodness of this life and the goodness of the life in the hereafter. To fight the evil whisperings of shaitan, we need to have that self-confidence, that self-belief, that fight within ourselves. True universal permanent values are gifted to humanity in the heart of the Quran. Allah does not always provide details of methods, processes, and procedures with which these values can be established, maintained, promoted, or developed. The Ummah has been given the gift of life with the freedom of choice and intellectual capabilities in order to devise those ways and means of acquiring those values and passing them on from generation to generation in an improved fashion with exemplars of the prophetic approach, the Sunnah, as a firm guidance. Slide 20. Science does not prevent us from misusing the power that it gives us. Knowledge accumulated by scientific discoveries can poison or cure, destroy or construct, promote life or bring about death. It provides us with the means that may facilitate our pursuits of bad ends or as well as good ones, as well as it is unable by itself to give us any moral direction. Power without vision is not always constructive and pro-human, as it has the tendency to become destructive and inhumane. The more we acquire knowledge, the more we acquire the need for the right Quranic guidance, the hidayah, and good counsel, rushd, the direction, tasdeed. Slide 21. Etymologically, to educate means to lead out, to bring out. Human beings are endowed with potential and the capabilities that remain dormant, may remain embryonic unless awakened, nourished, or nurtured to bring them into fruition to the fullest extent. The example of the iceberg is always given in workshops by most of you, and certainly we've used it in chapter 2 and chapter 4 in the book. Slides 22 and 23. Every child is born a Muslim. Every child is born with the potential to learn, fitrah. Every child is full of curiosity and wants to learn. Every child is entitled to a broad and balanced curriculum. Every child needs opportunities and support. to achieve their full potential. In order to raise the level of personal developments to the highest cognitive performance, what is inherent within the self is a need of nurturing. We, as educators and teachers, must provide the opportunities. Children actually provide their own opportunities. Children play and find opportunities to learn. They support themselves to learn. They motivate themselves to learn. But in order to get them to the highest cognitive performance, these opportunities, these creative and imaginative opportunities, are the responsibility of the educators. We must create those opportunities imaginatively, joyously. We must support those children who have this natural tendency to learn. The support has to be quality support. Every time they need it, we should be there. We shouldn't always interfere in their learning for the sake of it. For example, teachers talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. 80% of the time in lessons is spent with teachers talking, 20% maybe less by children. Not right. The support has to be only when it's needed. The intervention has to be fit for the purpose. Purpose is for the child to learn. The motivation has to be both extrinsic and intrinsic. Children are naturally have that tendency to learn. So we must be there to support them in their learning. Chapter 19, we actually wrote something about the psychological basis of personality and character building, and a little bit about Quranic guidance for its development. And chapter 21 in the book, we talk about the character building as the ultimate aim of Quranic education. Chapter 22, mostly for the non-Muslims, meanings of worship, prayer, and learning. A believer is entrusted with rights and responsibilities throughout life, whilst learning, striving hard to understand and applying the guidance of Allah in improving the quality of life for oneself and for everyone else. As Allah's vicegerent, we have that personal responsibility on us. The IBERR think tank promotes simple formally within the framework of the Qur'an and Sunnah. For example, learn, understand, and apply. Love, live, and share. Learn, understand, and apply, I have got as a message from the last sermon of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he said he left with us, with the Ummah, two things, the Qur'an and the Sunnah. And for me, the message underlying that sermon was, Akram, learn the Qur'an and Sunnah. Understand the depths of that Qur'an and Sunnah, and then apply it in your life. That's the message I got from it. Apply it in your life. That is as simple as that. For teachers and educators to create exciting opportunities and offer quality enabling support is a huge responsibility. All 7 aspects of their personality, the moral spices, need that quality support and the opportunities for the children to develop themselves. Chapter 23 is about the characteristics of a highly balanced personality. We identify 76 characteristics of a mu'min from the Qur'an. We describe from the Qur'an, and they're listed with chapter and references from the Qur'an. Slide 24, the system of regular worship of Allah. As I said, love Allah, love, live, and share. Love Allah, love Allah's book, love Allah's prophet, love Allah's creation, love yourself, love all human beings, love what life is all about. Create love around you. Feel the love. Share that love. Live with that love. With a deep understanding of that love of Allah and the love of life. Share that love of Allah, that love of life, love of righteous life with humanity. That's the crux of education in the heart of the Qur'an. Slide 25 from the Prophet's last sermon. Love, live, and share, learn, understand, and apply. Really, the Qur'an emphasizes the system of mutual reform and correction with wisdom and kind words. Ilm to amal, knowledge to action, learn, understand, and apply. Slide 26. Chapter 25 in the book is about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ as the greatest teacher and educator, the ideal role model for teachers and educators of the future. Chapter 26 is how the concepts of learning to teach and teaching to learn are interlinked and interdependent. Chapter 27 contains details of the prophetic methods of teaching and learning. This chapter is based on the original in Arabic by Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda. I think most of you will have read it and known about it. Supplemented by his son Sheikh Muhammad Zahid Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda, with a few additions at the request of Sheikh Muhammad Zahid Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda by myself. Slide 27. Teaching to learn, learning to teach. Teaching and learning are so interlinked and interdependent. When you're teaching, when anybody's teaching, if you're not trying to learn about the children who are in front of you, more about them, who they are, what they know, what they can do already, what they understand, if you are not learning that, then you're not really teaching. You cannot really call yourself a teacher. The teacher is the one who puts himself in the place of the learner first and foremost. Love the learner. Convey that love to the learner so that they want to be with you to learn. Slide 28, it shows the latest design of the cover that I keep changing because I like to play around with Inkscape. It's a free downloadable thing that is available, and much to the frustration of my wife, who thinks that I'm crazy to go over and over again and again messing about on the counter on the computer. You will have gathered this from the slides that I presented during this presentation. I'm fascinated, and I love playing around and trying to learn new and different ways of presenting the same information in order to communicate more effectively, or just to maintain an interest in myself and in the work that I hope I continue to do until the day I am called back by my Creator. There has been an immense sweep of intellectual interest over centuries, which has resulted in a variety of philosophies by many notable thinkers. They were all influenced by factors like their age, personal likes and dislikes, artistic tendencies, religious inclinations, cultural conditioning, heritage, socio-political affiliations, and many more factors peculiar to them as individuals, as thinkers within the context of their own socio-political and cultural norms and values. Their thinking and their definitions of education are compared in the book with the Deen of Islam. What comes from the Qur'an, from the heart of the Qur'an. These historical facts are given serious consideration in chapter 1 and 2. Slide 29 talks about the promoting global Islamic education movement, including striving for excellence. Chapter 3 contains 8 case studies that IBERR looked at closely. IBERR was involved as advisor consultant in all those eight case studies. They're a bit out of date now, but nevertheless useful to love, live, and share with. They contain illustrations of what is not effective and good to know how to approach Islamification of education, Islamization of knowledge. Slide 30. There's nothing to it but to do it. There's nothing to it but to do it. You have to go through it to get to it. It's a saying that one of my Buddhist friends taught me, but it's something that is so relevant. There's nothing to it for us but to do it. The Qur'an is there. The Prophet's guidance is there. The best is there. It's a gift for us. Subhanallah. There's nothing to it but to do it. We have to get through it to do it, to get to it. Slide 31. We display welcome boards in our entrance in the schools and colleges saying, enter to learn, leave to serve, with an attitude of gratitude. We want our children to be self-confident and pious and righteous and good Muslims, while at the same time be conscious of humility as modeled by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. My interpretation of the Quranic injunction for myself only, not for anybody else, it's just me thinking, is to ask my Lord when Allah says, it's something that I've thought of, again and again. I interpret it this way: my Lord, increase me in my knowledge and understanding of your truth, your goodness and your beauty, and give me the tawfiq to follow in the footsteps of your prophets, your beloved prophets, the last of the prophets, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. That's my interpretation of this gift from Allah. There are so many, such wonderful gifts that we have been given. Allah has gifted us everything, the best. Slide 32 is the golden rule that I often share with my non-Muslim friends, and they tell me about how their religions are also conscious of this golden rule. I've been going on and on. Jazakallah khair for listening. May Allah shower His blessing on all of you for actively supporting the Muslim Teachers Network. May Allah accept all your efforts to promote the global Islamic education movement and reward you abundantly for all your good deeds. Stay safe. Keep thinking and carry on the mission of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah grant all of us the tawfiq to follow in the footsteps of His prophets. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Jazakallah khair, Haji Akram. That was absolutely wonderful, mashallah. A real treat for an hour. We often wonder where time goes when time is passing by so quickly. But mashallah, I think we've spent the last hour in real reflection, which of course is incredibly valuable. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, instructs us to reflect, ponder, and that reflecting and ponder, as you know, is far more valuable than even carrying out some of other ritual actions. And of course, the ritual actions, of course, praying and fasting are incredibly important and have almost unlimited value. But what then for reflecting and pondering? MashaAllah. Thank you so much, Haji Akram, for facilitating us this afternoon. I am going to go straight over to Haji Idris, who you described as your partner in crime. So we will want to hear from your partner in crime, inshallah. So let's go over to him. I know he's had his hand up for a while, so I'll unmute him now. Haji Idris, all the way from South Africa. Okay.
Assalamu
So you're the partner in
alaikum.
crime then.
Alaikum assalam.
Assalamu alaikum. My most beloved brother. It is so emotional, Akram Bhai, to see you. Our hearts are there. And I know your concern has always been our children. You always motivate people. You speak from your heart. And those tears of yours come from the depths of your heart. And I really pray, it's my earnest prayer, that your words that you spoke with such facility and with conviction, it inspires all of us to understand the meaning of the Quran and to translate it to the classroom and be like Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his finest exemplar. So it's good to see your Mubarak face. So your enthusiasm has not diminished at all. You're still passionate and loving, and you're still handsome like me, brother. And I say, I like it.
I like it too.
Trust, you and I are the patrons, alhamdulillah. So when you say good things about them, it's not about us. May Allah bless you for this series. And it is my view, if all those who attended this series, if they do not reflect and become more dynamic, then something is wrong with them. So Akram Bhai, my love to your beloved wife. Tell her I miss her cooking, and I'll tell her I like it.
I like it.
Assalamu alaikum.
All right, Jazakallah khair, Haji Idris, all the way from Durban in South Africa. Let's go to Sister Farah Ahmed, who I know has also got her hand up. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Farah.
Yeah.
Let's, Sister Farah, assalamu alaikum. Let me get you unmuted first, if I can. I will try. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Farah.
Walaikum salam. Walaikum salam. It's lovely to see Haj Akram, Haj Idris here, mashallah. And I think one of the things I want to say is that when, those of us living in the West, we have this tendency to equate masculinity with a lack of emotion. And yet our elders who perhaps grew up in other places, to have a more Islamic rounded understanding of drawing upon the heart, and that the emotions are not something to be afraid of, but to be harnessed. And I was really pleased to hear Haj Akram talking about that actually everything is to do with doing and being. We can contemplate, we can think, we can reflect, but in our tradition, it's about the action, and it's about an awareness of that action, and it's about bringing that into fruition in our lives. And I think that was the most important point that came out to me. But what I would really like to hear about, and Haj Akram doesn't talk about this, I've never heard him speak about it, so I'd be really curious to know, is his work with the schools in Kashmir. I would really like him to sort of illustrate for us how all the ideas that he's presented here, how they manifest themselves in the schools that he's been patronizing out there for many, many decades now, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. My dear sister Farah, you inspire us all with all your dedicated work. And in answer to your question about Kashmir, and it started in Azad Kashmir with an inspirational figure like General Rahim. He donated his family land in Rawalakot, and I got involved when he came to Britain to raise some funds. And I said to him that, I've seen so many people, generals come, they take the money and go away. We don't hear from them. But he ashamed me, he embarrassed me by saying, come on, I'll give you the ticket, come and see what we're doing. And I went there, cut a long story short, and I got involved. And I'm glad I did, because it was about taking the quality of education to remote villages, to children who have not had this privilege and who have not really had the opportunity to have this access to quality education. And we promoted that with the help of VSOs and so on. And we've established 3 schools and a college of teacher education. And all that I've shared with you today has been part of that changing sort of reality for those schools. And I have to admit that not all teachers and not all the schools are finely tuned into what I've shared with you. But if I tell you that out of frustration, trying to change things and get to a stage where I'm better satisfied, I then, inspired by General Rahim, persuaded my own family to donate land in the village from where my father came. And my wife and I go there every year now for 3 months or 4 months to help to establish a school there. And it's part of that movement. And I have more of a say in that school than the other Kashmir Education Foundation schools. And I'm more, involved and engaged in getting the ideas that I've shared with you today into practice in that school. And we trained the teachers from the local villages who were not trained in university and so on. They were just graduates from local villages who got married and settled. And we've trained them and we spend time with them. We take them from where they are to where they wish to be and where we would wish them to be in terms of achieving the sort of things that I've shared with you, the enlightenment from the Qur'an, the benefits of the guidance of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to make sure that every aspect of our work is related to the Quranic and the prophetic, to the Quran and the Sunnah. I mean, that is not an easy task. And it's been a learning process for us, because my wife and I had very little idea about the culture and the norms and the values of the people in the villages. We have now children from 5 villages, and they all have their own standards, their own norms and values. And that challenge we are still meeting. We are still learning about their norms and values. And we're not trying to impose, but we're trying to take the message of the Quran and Sunnah. We're trying to take it with as much wisdom as we have, and as much love and compassion as we can share with them. And then, hopefully they will transmit that love and share it with the children who they are serving in the school. We call it the global school, global village school, and we have this dream of establishing a global village college and a global village university, because that area hasn't got any facilities of that nature. And that's my dream. And until the day I die, those are ways in which we have tried to put things into practice. Love, live and share, learn, understand and apply are very simple methods of getting people to think for themselves. The principal was from the village, and she kept saying, can I go to training? No, just think for yourself. Thinking is the most important thing. When you think for yourself, what's best for you, what's best for the children, then I keep telling her, look, just ask yourself, is this something that is beneficial for the children? That's the first question. Is this something that is beneficial for the teachers? And then thirdly, is this beneficial for the family? Ask yourselves these things, simple questions, and put into practice what you think is best. Comes from your heart. Be conscious of Allah. Be with Allah. And really, that authority, that power from Allah will guide you. And that's the best way forward. And we get carried away with our qualifications and certifications. I don't know what those certifications are sometimes, but I think the best guidance and the best way forward is to think for ourselves and to put into practice what Allah has gifted us.
Okay. Jazakallah khair. Haji Akram, we got Sister Sarah or Sarah, I think it is. Let me unmute to you, please, for your question. Sister Sarah, I'm going to unmute you now. Go, I think I can.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam.
First of all, I would like to thank Neither Trust for hosting these webinars, as they've been very useful for the past few weeks. Second, to say, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you, Sheikh Akram, a long life in order to educate us with your wise words. Sheikh Akram, I have 3 questions. The first is, can you please expand on what you mean when you refer to education of self, for self, and self? And secondly, what was the purpose for you referring to the moral spices when speaking to the non-Muslim professional educators? And lastly, could you please reiterate the title for the book published by Dr. Abdul Haq? Jazakallah khairan.
The title of the book was Educational Philosophy of the Holy Qur'an. It's out of print. That's why he asked me to, publish it again. And I've rewritten it, I think, more than 100 times, because he was an author. He did his PhD. So that's the answer to your third question. Answer to your second question, I think the reason I got the opportunity to look at the acronym and the letters that formed that acronym, and we pondered upon that, because we had thought about not moral spices so much, but these 7 aspects of personal development for a long time. As the think tank of IBERR, we thought about what is it, what are the life skills that every individual has or needs to have, or every child needs help in developing, and so on. And so that acronym developed, and Idris then helped us to put it together. Idris is an English teacher with great creativity and imagination, and he formulated this moral spices. And it's brilliant, because ever since then, I've used it extensively with my non-Muslim friends. Wherever I have discussions and discourses with them, and workshops with non-Muslims on education, I use it, because it's almost like a icebreaker, because I use moral spices, and then I explain all 7 aspects, and I say, let's spice it up. Let's, life is too short. Let's not just get bogged down with some of the things they talk about. Leave me dead, really. So I want to bring them back to living real life as promoted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I use moral spices to get them to appreciate and value that there are other ways of living. There are perspectives on life that are different from theirs. And it's good to. So I use it for that purpose. And your first question was about self. Yeah. Really, it's a simplistic way of looking at education that we provide to our children. Children want to learn, and if you want to teach children, there are 2 ways in which you approach teaching. One is to teach the subject that you have mastered in your mind. You have worked so hard throughout your life. You have become a physicist, chemist, biologist, mathematician, whatever. You have specialized in child psychology or whatever. And you really trying to share that with the children in your own way. And that teaching is focused on teaching rather than learning. And I like to think of learning of the self as primarily important, because children are already thinking, they're already learning. All we want to do is create more opportunities and support them in that learning, motivate them, incentivize that. In creating those opportunities, we must never forget that self of the child, the self which begins to think, who am I? What am I doing? What is the purpose of my life? What am I doing here? And here, when you talk to children and say to them, you are beautiful. I say that to every child I meet. Do you know what? You're beautiful. can you tell me why you're so beautiful? Can you tell me, can you tell me why you're so wonderful? And they look at you as if you're mad. But then I said, hey, come here. I'll tell you. This is a secret between you and me. You are so beautiful because you are created by Allah. See, it's learning about the self. You are important. You are created by Allah. I love you. Allah loves you. You are loved. That loving, compassionate thinking gets the self to develop better. So, the self is the most important. Doesn't, you have the caveats of don't become selfish, don't become arrogant, don't become, so self-important that you, in Muslim schools, go around playgrounds and say, oh, we are Muslims, they are Kafirs, and, we are superior and they're inferior. Not that sort of self-development, but the self-development with humility. That Allah has gifted you with something special, and I am making best use of that something special. I want to be the vicegerent on this earth. I want to be conscious of everybody around me, the earth that He's created, the ecology, everything around me. My responsibility. So the self comes into play every time I think of learning. So I want to turn that teaching and learning into learning and teaching first, because it's all about learning. We're learning all the time. I'm learning at my age about life. We never stop learning. So that's why the self comes in as a main focus for me.
All right, okay. Jazakallah khair, Aji Akram-Khan Cheema, who is not really from London, is all the way from Cheadle, next to Bradford, mashallah, but is now, alhamdulillah, has blessed us in London over the last year or so, I think. Has it been a year, Haji? Has it been a year?
Yes, November 2018, we moved here in London.
All right, mashallah.
37 years we spent in Bingley. Not Cheadle, but Bingley.
That's it, not next to Cheadle, though.
Shipley.
Shipley.
Next to Shipley and Keighley.
This all sounds like a foreign language to all people. Cheadle, Shipley.
Sure.
Okay.
Cheadle is near Manchester.
Manchester, okay. All right, okay. Okay, well, I think, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the webinar. I tried to stretch it out a little bit more, but I think we've come to, right there, just like an elastic band, you can only stretch it so much, and I think it's, let's call it a day, inshallah. So I would like to, first of all, thank our guest for today, Haji Akram-Khan Cheema, for your wonderful words and wisdom. And I hope, and what I'm going to be doing is when we upload this to our YouTube channel, inshallah, we're going to watch it all again, okay? So what I would also recommend to you all who have been watching is to rewind it back all again, or go back to the beginning and watch it all again, inshallah. And some of you have asked questions about PowerPoint slides and authors of books, etc. It's all on the video, inshallah, and we will be releasing the recording of this webinar, inshallah, in the next few days. I would like to thank our audience, those who've been here every single week, week in and week out, and those of you that have perhaps just arrived here for the first time today. Thank you so much. I have dropped a link in the chat box of the playlist link for our YouTube channel for all the videos, inshallah. And over the next few days, as I've mentioned, this webinar will complete that series. Now, we will be back. We're just going to take a little bit of a break now that we are approaching the summer holidays, inshallah. We have got an exciting project coming up. Nida Trust has got a really, really, really exciting project coming up. I can't say what it is yet, inshallah, but it will involve much of what Haji Akram has talked about in his webinar today, inshallah. So we do look forward to welcoming you at future webinars and courses, inshallah. So we've not gone away. We'll just have a little bit of a break, inshallah, and we'll be back very soon, inshallah. The only other thing I would like to know about from Haji Akram is your book. Your book. education in the heart of the Quran, when can we see it? When is it going to be published? Do we know? Do we have a date? Or is it something that we, when can we look forward to reading that? I know it's about 300 pages long, I think, 300 pages long.
It's 480 pages
Whoa.
long. And according to, Dr. Musharraf Hussain, it's too long. No teacher will read it. And then I need to, break it down into smaller booklets. But it is what it is. And, if anybody out there has any idea how to get it published quickly, then I'm happy to receive that information. It is with a very good friend of mine at the moment who is helping to try and get it published. We don't know how long it will take. It depends on a number of things. Finance is one of them, but we'll keep you and Nida obviously informed. But if anybody wants to, get copies of the manuscript as it is, I'm very happy to share that. I've shared it with you, Babar. I'll share it with anybody really, because all knowledge comes from Allah. I don't believe in copyright. I'll tell you an experience I had in India when I was there in Baroda University with some of the dons, and I presented a workshop, and I gave some handouts, and I said to them, please be careful with these handouts because obviously they're copyrighted. And one of them stood up and said, Mr. Khan Cheema, you are in India. In India, copyright is the right to copy. So I was amused, and I thought of, all knowledge is from Allah. And I'm happy to share it with anybody who wants to read it.
Okay, inshallah. We look forward to receiving that, inshallah, and perhaps we can help, inshallah, to make sure it's published so the whole world can read it, inshallah. Okay, Jazakumullah khair once again. Take care of yourselves. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.